Yeah, thank you very much, Mark, and a very warm welcome from my side, which means in my case, a very warm welcome from Paris. Half an hour for European democracy, so I suggest to start without further preliminaries. The challenge is quite clear. Among the many crises which Europe and the European Union are facing, the questions concerning democracy and values are maybe the most profound and at the same time the most difficult to answer. Do we really share the same values within the EU? How can we strengthen them, and how can we strengthen, hence, the democratic legitimacy of the European Union? Even from my side, a very warm welcome. We have a very distinguished guest, one of the most experienced members of the European Commission. Mark already introduced her. Very welcome, Vice President Věra, Jourová.
Thank you for having me here. Good morning.
Vice President, you are joining us today from Prague, not from your hometown, but from your home country. And the days before you were in Poland. You spoke to the Polish Prime Minister and you met Polish citizens, for instance, in Gdansk. Maybe to start with a I don't know, easy question or a difficult question. Which is more difficult, to convince the Polish Prime Minister of the European values or to convince the Polish citizens of the value of the European Union?
Yes, both is important. With the Prime Minister, I have quite a good, long-lasting dialogue about what the Commission dislikes on Polish system, which is especially in the field of checks and balances and judiciary, seems to us that it deviates from European standards. And when I speak to the Prime Minister, we have a chance to explain to each other the positions, and maybe we never close the door for finding solution, which is important. For me, ongoing dialogue is important. You might say that we need to see the results, but also the process is very, very key. As for the citizens, we have a tendency to not to leave the comfortable zone of the bubble. I have so many public dialogues and discussions, and I always have, especially now through virtual means, it's incredible. I always hear the consent. Yes, you are right. So we do not go enough to the streets to speak to the people who will be unpleasant, critical. But what I heard in Gdańsk, in Poland, from the people I spoke to, also in the streets, that Europe should do more to help Poland to keep, to be the country which fully recognizes the values which Solidarność fought for, because it was very much marked by the current event, because we were celebrating together with Lech Walesa, which was a great moment for me to stand there next to him. We were celebrating Solidarność, which I think started the way of Central and East Europe, the way towards democracy and freedoms.
We will immediately come back to the question what Europe can do or should do, but maybe before we discuss about this one, we have to ask, what are these European values we are speaking about? What is the common ground, or is there common ground? So straight on, what do you mean when you speak about European values?
For me, the main one is that Europe should remain the continent where we are equal in our rights, because this is a great achievement of the past. And it's easy to say and easy to do. So this equality in our rights, also equality of opportunities, equal chances for everyone, this is something which the institutions have to guarantee, and the system has to guarantee it. And too many people in Europe do not trust that the system works for them. That's our current problem, the lack of trust. So this is the value which we should do more to guarantee through the well-functioning principle of the rule of law, where you have the guaranteed independent judge, where you have equal access to the information. So it's, for me, freedom of speech and free access to the objective information. So here I mean we should strengthen the role of independent media, and also we should strengthen the safeguards which should lead to equality of opportunities. Here I mean the protection of minorities and their chances to have decent and good life in Europe. So these are, for me, the European values which we got used to, and we are not aware that we could lose them. And especially the rule of law sounds very abstract, something even just legal issue. But when you realize that it means for the normal citizen whether he or she can go to the court and rely on independent judgment, well, I think that this is fantastic value. And in Europe, even the single market itself could not work without these values, especially the checks and balances and the access to justice and access to information. If somebody thinks that we can dismantle Europe, again, to get just to the single market level, it's just illusion and dangerous illusion. Because without the values I mentioned, we cannot continue even as just an economic entity.
I mean, you said it. Many of the things we are speaking about sounds very abstract. The rule of law, and on an abstract level, speaking about equality on an abstract level, I think many people can agree. When it comes to what it really means in the daily life and in the daily practice of governments, the question is: do we really speak about the same issues? The Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, he openly argues that there is no common and hence binding definition of rule of law. So if we cannot agree on what rule of law means, we are in trouble, aren't we?
Well, it's so easy to refer to missing definition. I disagree with Viktor Orbán on many things, on this one as well, because yes, of course, we have defined what the rule of law means in Europe, and it's also in numerous decisions of the European Court of Justice. This is not about definition. This is much simpler when you see the unlimited hunger for power and appetite to govern forever, which means that you switch off democratic safeguards, you limit the power of media, you discipline the judges, you make the civil society organizations silent or difficult to survive. Well, this means that your hunger for power is so big that you just cement yourself by undemocratic means. And to be the citizen in such country, I would really do not like somebody who wants to govern forever. I want to have my valued choice and valued voice in the elections and between elections. So for me, if you ask me what is the main guarantee of democracy, it's not the prime minister who understands the limits of power and the need to have the power limited. For me, this is well-informed and demanding citizen. I worked in consumers policy 5 years, and it was much less explosive territory than the values. I can tell you, I loved it because it was about safety of products, safety of food, much easier to explain than safety of democracy or the political system. And I remember I was telling the people many times, be demanding, shout when they are selling you for high price something with low quality. Keep the market under pressure. And my advice is the same for the democratic system or the system as such. The people who are not difficult, who do not require information, who do not want their government to be accountable and limited in its power, then such governor can become dictator soon. Who doesn't have such citizens? Yeah.
I mean, without any doubt, in a democracy, the citizens are in the center of the democracy. But now it sounds a little bit like if you would say it's the citizens, it's not us who can do or who can guarantee democracy. What is your role as Commission? What is your role as the European Union?
Yeah, I didn't want this to sound alibistic. I just have a feeling that we do not speak enough about the citizens and about their role. That we who are in power, including me, we have a tendency to speak about what we are doing. That's why I wanted to encourage if the citizens are listening to us to maybe emphasize their role in the process. What the Commission should do. First, what the Commission should not do. Not to respect the rule of law, which means not to respect the limitation of our power. And I am the person coming from the Central Europe. We are extremely sensitive about somebody from outside who is mentoring, who is morally bashing us, who is doing it without the proper respect for the competencies and for the limitation. So this is where I have my limits. And the limits are given by the treaty. So the Commission has to use all the tools when we see the deviation from the standards. The example of Poland, the justice reform has been started in 2015, is very problematic. In my view, it didn't deliver what the government wanted to make more quicker and more efficient judiciary for the people. And the cost is very high of this, not only financial cost of this reform, but political, reputational cost for Poland. And for me, it means that when a country, and I mentioned Poland, introduces changes into the system, which mean that judiciary is becoming politicized and judges are not independent anymore, I have to do the proper analysis and react by infringement procedure, which leads to the European Court of Justice. Here comes the definition of the rule of law. We have it. And the court is applying it in its rulings, saying this is not the system which still fulfills the requirements of the rule of law principle. So infringements, we have Article 7, which is very unpleasant for Poland and Hungary because they have to answer the questions of their peers, of the ministers. This is not for the Commission, but for the states. And budget conditionality, which is important step forward for the Commission, which gives me the chance to launch the procedure on the basis of the assessment that in some country there is no guaranteed protection of EU money, of EU taxpayers' money. It was missing, and we have this new tool since January this year.
I mean, this is not the place, and we don't have the time to step into the details of the different tools and the different mechanisms you mentioned. But since you mentioned the mechanisms, at the same time, we have had endless debates, be it about the independence of judiciary in Poland you mentioned, be it about LGBTQ rights in different countries, be it about freedom of press, and so on and so on. And I guess the overall impression of the people is none of the instruments you mentioned, none of the mechanisms so far hindered the Polish government, the Hungarian government, maybe other governments to do what they are doing. So the question is, are the tools you have, you spoke about the limits of the European Commission, are the tools sufficient?
The tools cannot do the magic themselves, of course, and the Commission cannot be a lonely sheriff. The system would not work well if everything should be done by the Commission. I always like to see the domestic mechanisms. For instance, I spoke to the new ombudsman in Poland, Mr. Wiącek. I cooperated with Adam Bodnar, the previous one, very brave man who was defending also rights of LGBT people, which is not easy topic and easy to defend value in Poland. And we spoke about the need to exhaust the domestic measures and tools and institutions. Of course, the Commission has to come when there is a breach of EU law. Yeah, but there are many breaches, or there might be breaches of domestic law, which is also about the values. And here it's important that other countries still have some remaining institutions which are defending the values. This is how the system should look like. I will give you an example. In emergency regimes, last year, COVID, it was not just stress test for health and economy, also for democratic checks and balances. Yeah, because suddenly the pressure on the governments was take the power and salvate us. It was that atmosphere, if you remember, spring this year or last year. And we were really under pressure as the Commission to invade into domestic matters, for instance, in Hungary, and replace the constitutional courts. And I resisted to even indicate that we would like to do that, because then the system would be really disbalanced in a dangerous way. My role is to balance the system, to stabilize the system, to be predictable, and not to be activist who will invade into the domestic matters. Again, you might say that it sounds alibistic. I just want to mention that it's the role of the Commission to be the guardian of the treaty and the guardian of the values, which are not only legal, not only political, not ideological, which should be universal. And that's why we have to be very careful how to work with these topics.
You mentioned the budget conditionality, which is a new mechanism which was introduced by the European Council in December, which, to put it short, means that for the first time the Commission has the possibility to cut off the funds for member states who don't apply to the rule of law. Once again, the question, the mechanism is there, the legislation is there, but the mechanism is not yet used. Why is it not yet used?
You cannot use it from day one. Day one was the 1st January this year, because we have fresh, new and brand new criteria for assessment of the countries which might qualify for such sanction. One correction, it's not the Commission who should apply the sanction, it should be the member state by the qualified majority vote. Yeah, so because I was designing this conditionality in the previous mandate, and to be honest, I didn't want to keep it just for the commission. I didn't know who will be sitting there.
Now it's you.
Yeah, it's a strange coincidence. When I said in 2017 that we should have the financial average, I said the sentence that who doesn't understand the values, he might understand the money. You can imagine the shout which I heard from many different places in Europe. Mm-hmm. And then in 4 years' time, it was enshrined in the regulation. So mm-hmm. from day one, we are assessing the countries. We are also working on more precise procedural rules because, you know, this is a heavyweight tool. And we need to have everything very well consulted and very transparent before we launch the procedure vis-a-vis some member states. Because immediately, once we launch the procedure, the state will lodge the complaint with the European Court of Justice. Mm-hmm. We can count with it. So, and I cannot afford to lose this game. This is too serious. Yeah. So, but we are working on it, and you know, this is a great achievement and a very, very strong tool. So, I really am determined to apply it.
Maybe for the last minutes, let's switch the perspective from the government and from your side to the citizen side. You mentioned already the different bubbles we are in, and how, I mean, in the perspective of citizens, governments always tend to be far away, but Brussels, the EU, seems to be even more far away. Working in Brussels, in one of the upper floors of the Commission building of the Parlement. Do you feel this gap, and do you think the gap has widened over the last couple of years?
Between Brussels and the people?
Yes.
Not really, but I think it didn't widen. But at the same time, I have to say I am a long-term critic of a lack of normal communication with people. When I say normal, it means no Brussels jargon, no abbreviations, no arrogant speech, no empty speech. You know, this is what we are sometimes pushing from Brussels to our permanent representations in the member states, just to replicate. Mm-hmm. I do not believe in successful homogeneous message from Brussels, which will reach the people in the member states. So that's why I am really fond of the idea of more decentralization and more respect for the people, which means also that we should do more to explain what we are doing, what we are planning. Now the conference on the future of Europe, it's a big test whether we are able to do that. Yeah, because we opened it for the general public, and now we are communicating with the people directly.
But is it just a question of communication? I mean, politics is always a question of communication. What is about participation? Which, I mean, many people have the feeling they have no chance to participate in European politics, in European policy.
Yeah, we tried to make it easier to submit successfully the European citizenship initiatives. Mm-hmm. And we already have several successful ones. The last one was the end cage age. It was about giving more space and good conditions to chicken and pigs and so on. It was so refreshing for me to work for animals because it's sometimes not very grateful to work for the people. This is a cynical joke. But this is something which we have to improve further so that the people can see that once they collect the signatures, we are seriously dealing with the proposal, and we are. But at the same time, we try to promote the work of the civil society, civil organizations, which are working as grassroots organizations. We are doing a lot of other things, not only just the communication, but also collaboration and I don't know, many projects in the member states where Brussels tries to get closer.
I mean, I don't want to be cynical neither, but do you really think that how many percentage of our audience do know about the European Citizens Initiative?
Not many, especially usually I can imagine that a citizen doesn't wake up in the morning eager to know what is the initiative. Mm-hmm. But when such a citizen sees some big problem, something which is painful for him, something which he would like to solve, then it might be the way for him or her to find this initiative, join forces with others, and go for the solution or propose the solution to the Commission. I believe that it has to be problem-based rather than just interest-based, that the people want to know what are the possibilities. Then there is education, and I think that here is a big gap, but it's more on the level of the member states.
Education, you mean information education about
yes,
the union?
Yes. But not only about the union, about the rights of people in the union. And again, here comes my mantra: the people through education and information should become more demanding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mrs. Jourová, Vice President, thank you so much. The half an hour is already over. We could easily fill another half hour or another half hours. Of course, we could continue, and we have to continue this debates for today. Thank you very much for joining us, and all the best to you in Prague.
To you too. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.